Hello, friends, and welcome to the Weekend Catch Up Club, the coffee morning show brought to you live every Saturday direct to Facebook and available later on demand at youtube.com/gamertagged. Yet again, I am joined by the man I just cannot get rid of, and nor would I ever want to. It is the Can of Tango himself, James McClellan.
I'm really starting to like that. Although we might even get a sponsorship deal out of it for you, Ross. There you go.
You know what? Energy drink sponsorships, I'm all for that. Like sugary saccharin pop. Let's bring it. Let's see if we can get some sponsorship. We've got the orange beards, Jamie. So all we need is the orange can of fizzy drink, and then we're sorted.
Promo writes itself, I think.
And of course, massive friend to the channel, one of my closest friends, it is Mr. Sean LeBeau at Sold Out Games. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good, thanks. I'm doing good. I now feel like I need to have a flavour associated, and I think I'm just going to go out there and just be classic rum and coke because, you know, alcohol at 11 a.m. on a Saturday morning. How are you guys?
That begs the question for maybe a questionable topic of conversation is what would you taste like if you were a beverage?
Oh wow. I want to say sweet, but then that's the easy way out. So I want to say excitement.
Ooh.
Because what's the point of drinking if it's not fun, right?
Are you saying that you would be an explosion in the mouth, Sean?
Not so much like kind of you know, like we eat like what's it called, Rice Krispies. Like, you know this.
The crackle, the snap, crackle, and pop.
Yeah, you know, something that's quite fun.
Okay.
We're not talking like full on like whatever those sweets are that you used to have when I was a kid. Yeah, that's a bit too much.
That kind of sherbety stuff that would like really like pop and crackle.
Oh, Pop Rocks.
Yeah. Pop Rocks, yeah. That,
I mean,
as cool as that would be, you won't be able to really talk whilst drinking me. This is an interesting conversation. I'm ready for it.
I'm not. I wasn't expecting any of this, but no, yeah.
That's the best part. Is just like throw a curveball in there because you know it's unscripted. We've got a main topic, but then something will pop up. It's like actually, yeah, let's just throw this into the mix and see what happens.
Yeah, and it's good to speak to you guys as well, and anyone that doesn't know. Jamie is the reason why I have a hit on my head. I'm sure we can clear that first thing before we get going.
Alan put the hit out. Right, Alan did put the hit out on, but it wasn't. I mean, a hit sounds like we were trying to get someone to kill you. He just wanted someone to grip you, which.
Is that better or worse?
No, I don't know.
What is the full story in this from your angle? Because it's different perspectives.
Yeah, so we were out for drinks in London at EGX.
Yes,
and it was the night.
Ross, actually.
That is, that's very true. When was that? About what, 7-8 years ago?
8, I think.
8 years ago. Wow.
So.
Wow.
Because it was the night that we tried to knock over the London Eye.
Ah, yes.
Oh, yeah.
which because we shoulder charged the London Eye, and then we had strangers joining in, going, "Yeah, we can get it down." And there's 30 people trying to knock over the London Eye, and it's not moving, obviously. And so we went for drinks. Well, we went for food, and then we went for drinks. We ended up in. We ended up in a really weird bar that we got lured into by a man who I honestly remember as being dressed entirely as Baron Samedi from the Bond films.
Wow.
But apparently he was just a nice guy in a suit, but I was quite drunk. And he did lure us into this bar in the middle of the night. But in the midst of all this, when we went looking for somewhere to drink, Sean mentioned this bar. He's like, there's a walkabout that's open. And we walked, I would conservatively say, 168 miles. or one. It was between there somewhere. And we didn't find it. And when we did find it, it was shut because by the time we found it, I think it was like 4 a.m. and we'd just been wandering aimlessly after leaving this other pub.
Yeah.
So the next, which we were in quite good humour because we had been drinking and it was a nice night. And so it was fine. But the next day when it got brought up, Alan put out a tweet £50 to anyone who grips LeBode. That was the next day, was the first thing we saw. And and then I think Sean spent the rest of EGX living in terror. So,
and the bounty's still active, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's managed to grip Sean.
Speaking, I'm sure at one point Alan said to me, and I can't remember when it was. It was, I don't know if it was Sean's birthday or if you had put up, it was a life event, something on Facebook. And Alan mentioned to me, "Oh, in celebration, I might cancel the hit. I'll have to tell Sean." But I don't think he ever actually did it. So yeah.
They've been in hiding. In hiding for 8 years.
Yeah. And now the only way we can see each other is virtually. Look at that.
It's the safest way for me, personally.
Can you do a virtual grip, or should we not even try and entertain something like that? And what would that look like? I don't know.
With VR coming on as it is, I'm sure there's probably a way, but I don't know.
Also, what is a grip? Like, I've never known what was a bit of it.
Isn't it just like by the arms, you just kind of like give them like a squeeze? It's like a little bit of a squeeze sort of thing.
This was
Maybe?
this
I don't know.
for this one. You really have to go to Alan, but basically, Alan, I'm going to say illegal bum fights in.
Okay.
Or kind of. Alan, there was a bit of somewhere that Alan used to work. There was a running joke about a fight club, and it kind of leaked into our conversations. And and then must have been someone he worked with. Next thing we knew, we just heard "give him a gripping" or "give it a good gripping," and then gripping became the term for attacking anything. So it can literally mean anything from a sudden and loving hug up to tackling someone off the side of a cliff. There doesn't seem to be a level, it's just grip them. So
we'll go with the former there. A nice loving cuddle,
Yeah.
A warm embrace of friendship, and we'll leave it at that. That's probably the safest option.
I'll feel better about the 8-year hit if we go with that, to be honest. So.
Exactly. So, chaps, we have an awesome show lined up. The main topic of the show is, of course, games too ambitious for their day that deserve a sequel. So we're going to get into that in just a minute. But before we do, we've got some exciting news which dropped earlier this week. And it is kind of mind-blowing, actually. And it is the return of Lucasfilm games. So a few years ago, LucasArts, the legendary developer behind titles such as Day of the Tentacle, Secret of Monkey Island, Full Throttle, X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter, closed its doors. It was essentially no more. EA had exclusive rights for 10 years to develop Star Wars licensed games, and then all of a sudden, coming to the end of that exclusivity, I think it finishes in 2023, so there's a couple of years left, but announced this week there's going to be a brand new Star Wars game. Lucasfilm Games has been formed, and they are clearly open to collaborating with other developers in the industry, the best in their fields. We have Ubisoft Massive, the developers behind Division 2, confirmed as making a new open-world single-player Star Wars game. And not only that, but my personal favourite, which I jumped out of my seat about, is Machine Games, the developer behind the new Wolfenstein games, the new Colossus, the New Order, Youngblood, etc. They are making an Indiana Jones game, and I think Todd Howard at Bethesda is going to be involved somehow as well, but largely it's going to be a Machine Games project. Epic news. What are your thoughts on this, Sean?
When I hear Machine Games and then I hear Indiana Jones, my brain instantly transported me to shooting up and dismembering so many Nazis. And I was like, wait, no, it can't be as visceral as that. So we're going to see Machine Games take us to another place where it might be outside of their comfort zone, or just do something really new. And it's huge news. And I'm a big LucasArts fan. I grew up with the Grim Fandangos and Day of the Tentacles and all of that side of things. And I kind of put that to bed. I was like, you know what? That was the end of an era where point and click was a thing that I grew up with. Yeah. And then like the equivalent of, The Walking Dead, the episodic ones, that kind of became the new point and click, but for the newer generation. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, cool. That's moved on. Gaming has gone to a different place. If we were to see, a resurgence of some of the classic IPs, even if it's like the updated versions of point and click, so it's not so retro, I'll be happy. I mean, see Grim Fandango come back or Full Throttle like as a sequel, not a remaster. There is a lot of great IP and writing and talent with even Tim Schafer's back on board if he could.
Like Sam and Max and all those classic games.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my take. My instant thing was, out of all of the news, I was like, Machine Games doing Indiana Jones, crazy, and I'm not sure what to expect because it won't be, whipping heads off people.
What if it's like a Red Band trailer version of an Indiana Jones game, and it is like full blown Tarantino take on Indiana Jones, and it is that like mutilating Nazis, because Indy's not a Nazi fan, so.
He isn't, but then would that be Indiana Jones?
Well, of course it wouldn't. It's Indiana Jones is very much the Saturday morning like Adventure Time serial type of format. It always has been. It's always Spielberg and Lucas have always said that their influence is like that, and James Bond is an influence on that as well. And it's just exciting. And I was having a chat about this with a couple of viewers when I was actually streaming the other night Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb on the original Xbox. Going back and playing that was just fantastic. It honestly holds up. But we were having a chat about, okay, what could that look like? Would it be first person, or do you think it has to be the third person Uncharted style of game? And it really got me thinking that maybe they could do fully first person, which would be really interesting, or they could give the camera option to like Red Dead, where you could jump between third person and first person as a potential option. And it really got me thinking, because you got to remember, the founders of Machine Games were original devs of Starbreeze Studios. Starbreeze Studios did The Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay, so they know first-person like melee systems really, really well. So it really got me thinking, could they be brazen enough to make it fully first-person? Or do you think that's just a no-starter? It has to be third-person?
I think if I'm going to think of such an icon as Indy, I know what he looks like in my head.
Yeah.
I kind of want to see that at least over 50% time of me playing.
Yeah.
Because if it's a first-person shooter, and, I'm not looking at anything other than the setting being the world that he's in. So I think I would need to at least always see, the hat, the attire, for it to feel like Indy still. Otherwise, it could just be anything. But that's me personally. I'm happy to, jump off and be like, cool, let's expand what I might be, pigeonholed into thinking.
Yeah, I think that is probably right. I mean, you want to see Indiana Jones, right? You do want to see Indiana Jones, but I think now first-person mechanics have been developed to such a state where it could actually work entirely first-person, because games like Dying Light, games like Dishonored series, it is platforming, it's puzzle solving, it's throwing a grapple hook or whether it's the bolo whip to swing around the environment. We're now at a situation where all the first-person mechanics do work really, really well for that stuff, which is traditionally third-person. Yeah. It's just a really interesting, it's probably going to be third-person, but it is really interesting to kind of explore, what would a first-person Indiana Jones be?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe, I think, I have to keep reminding myself there are games that have done those sort of mechanics right. Because whenever I start to think about stuff, like one of the things I think, and I know it's got a lot of fans, and not to detract from the game at all, but Mirror's Edge is one of the ones that always comes to mind for me, and I always found that a little bit difficult to. I played it for a handful of hours, and I watched people play it, and I found it very difficult to accept the movement from a first-person perspective. But then again, I mean, FPS was always... I started out in gaming with PC and FPS, and that was all I played back in the day. So I was Doom, Quake, Hexen, Heretic, and like the notion of playing a first-person shooter... The notion of playing a first-person shooter where you can jump was alien to me for long enough. So being able to parkour your way across a building, I found it quite disorientating. Yeah. But like you said, like Dying Light and things, and Dishonored, which is a phenomenal game, like a couple of games, like those have done these things really well. Yeah. That being said, I still want to see. I want to see the hat. I want to see the leather jacket. I want to see a little bit more. And I think you can. I kind of want to see a film that plays out like a game that plays out like one of the films.
Yeah.
So some nice puzzle elements, some good set pieces, some cinematic storytelling and stuff, because it's such a big character and such a big world that they've built with Indy. So he's so very much larger than life.
Mm-hmm.
I can be ashamed to not use that in a game, because there are games, we've seen games that have done similar. Again, I know I've not played Uncharted, and also the only thing is, all I can think of when I think of an indie game, Tomb Raider, but with a hat. So
Yeah.
and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly happy with a little bit more old school Tomb Raider, but brought up to date.
That genuinely makes me think
any
that
sense.
it does make a lot of sense. I was going to mention a little bit about the third person thing there, about Harrison Ford's body language was so integral to the character. So those little mannerisms of his body language would you kind of want to see that stuff. But yeah, talking about like clearly the influences are from both sides, vice versa. Is Uncharted is heavily influenced by both Tomb Raider and Indiana Jones, so most likely the new one is going to be influenced by them. And with Uncharted essentially wrapped for a while after the fourth game, it might come back. We don't really know when or what that's going to look like. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was the last game that kind of wrapped up that trilogy of the Tomb Raider reboots. So there's no new Tomb Raider on the horizon that we know about. That it might come eventually, but there's no real game to fill that genre, that type of game at the moment. Like a good, full-blooded, fun adventure style of game. So it's like an open playing field for them, really. Do they take that Uncharted format and give us that experience, or do they do like something way out there that's totally radically different? It's all to play for, really. It sounds really, really quite interesting.
Yeah, I hope they do go somewhere completely different, because it's not exactly uncharted territories, excuse the pun. Like, we have a great franchise of Uncharted. We have great Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
For them to do the same would probably be an injustice to the brand. So maybe the first person thing could make it stand out. Maybe it'll be something completely, so unique that we're unaware of that's going to come. But if it was to follow the same formula, it's going to leave people be like, well, it's this, but indie.
Yeah.
And Machine games are, the right people to make something stand out. Because when I think about Wolfenstein, and I'm like, that's changed so much since the original, as well as other shooters at the time. Like, it was very different to Doom, even though they both come from Bethesda. So, maybe they can just pull something out of the bag and just make it have its own kind of own feel, and people won't have to compare to, Lara and Nate.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the other news was that Ubisoft Massive, the developers of The Division, are going to be making a Star Wars game. So obviously very early. I think it was a leaked announcement. I can't actually remember if it just slipped. But that's really interesting as to what to expect from that and where that could go, because it could go any time frame within the entire Star Wars lore. I think they're going to avoid the Skywalker era. And maybe it could be like the High Republic era. It could be, I don't know, it could be absolutely anywhere. It could be Clone Wars era. It could be absolutely anywhere. And it makes me think, because it's Ubisoft Massive, it makes me think that it's going to be a co-op game, which sounds like it could be brilliant. And I don't really know how I feel about if it is going to feature Jedis and stuff like that. I kind of want a game where there's no Jedi in it at all, and you're just either a mercenary, or you're a clone trooper, or heck, maybe it is the bringing Republic Commando back in some form, and you're one of a squad, or the potential for, or you're just a mercenary, you're like Firefly style, you're just a smuggler or something like that. I don't really know, but anything without Jedi sounds quite appealing right now, because it's so latched onto Star Wars. You gotta have Jedi, and the universe the lore is so rich with not having Jedi in it. It makes me wonder what could be tapped there to, again, similar situation with Indiana Jones, to make it stand out from every other Star Wars game which is focused around the Jedi. Is there other things that can tap into there? So it's really interesting to see what maybe Ubisoft Massive can really bring to it. And it's going to be solid at launch. That's the good thing. It's gonna work, and it's gonna be this hugely expansive, super detailed world. And whether it's co-op, whether it's not, I really don't know. But I'm hoping it kind of is co-op, depending on where they go with it.
any opportunity to get more co-op games into the market, because I feel like there are a lot of good co-op games about, but I don't know. I just feel like co-op's getting a wee bit forgotten sometimes by developers these days. Like, it doesn't always. There used to be. It just feels like there was a lot more. Maybe it's just the games I'm playing these days, but it felt like there was a lot more options back in the day. Even if it was a case of just you would play the normal single player campaign, but there'd be two of you, which obviously gets a bit tedious. But I'd like to see, and definitely without Jedi as well, I would like to see. It'd be interesting if you could play as a squad of bounty hunters, or even, I'd be quite happy with a game where I could just play as, or maybe not stormtroopers, but one up from stormtroopers, because I want to be able to hit something and not die at the first shot. But no, I think it would be interesting. A co-op game in the Star Wars universe with some good old phaser battles and some good locales would be nice.
Yeah. Jamie, did you just say phasers? That's a Star Trek thing, not
heard,
a Star Wars thing.
I know. I'm trying to anger the nerds. It's for the best.
Yeah.
And very quickly, I'm going to drop this in because I was thinking about, okay, if Lucasfilm are opening up like the opportunity to work with best-in-class studios outside of like any possibility, it got me thinking, okay, what franchises would you like to see Lucasfilm bring back with assigned to our, it's kind of like what Jamie and I did a while back with our fantasy like football sort of scenarios. If any studio could work on any IP, we did that with Bethesda. But what I was thinking about, how crazy would this be if there was some kind of Secret of Monkey Island tie-in with Rare and Sea of Thieves? Wow. That's what I was thinking about. I thought, that could be like, maybe you go to an island and then Guybrush Threepwood is just there as like a hermit or something, and you know there's some kind of like lore crossover or like narrative thread that's just like secret.
Yeah,
that could be really cool.
Yeah, I haven't played Sea of Thieves, but I'd imagine you probably have. Is there like boss battles where you have really powerful ships, or? Because I can imagine LeChuck just being an end game like secret. Yeah.
Well, you got like the Kraken and stuff, but yeah, there could be like LeChuck as this like phantom pirate ship that you have to
that'd be
like
cool.
go up against or something like that. That would be pretty awesome crossover. Jamie, I saw your eyes light up as well earlier. So.
Yeah, well, so there are the skeleton ships now and things like that, where you do actually you go up against waves of ships with like a tougher ship at the end. It's quite impressive actually as you're sailing along and this pirate ship comes out from underneath the water next to you and just starts blasting into your hull. Like, it's quite.
Oh wow!
It gets a bit hairy, and when that happens and then the Kraken attacks, which we have had, no, it's not fun. But well, it's fun, but it's not. It's scary as hell. But there is actually a game which it ties into the Too Ambitious thing as well a wee bit, but there is a game that Lucasfilm made back in the day, which I would kill to see a resurgence of, and I've wanted this for years, and it's Loom.
Oh yeah,
I love that game. It's one of these, and the reason I think of it as slightly too ambitious is because it was very clever, and the storyline of it was very, very, very clever. It's about the weavers, and they weave the tapestry of history and life, and it's they weave songs into the tapestry. It's really hard to explain that game off the top of my head, but to the point that I played this when I was younger, and I can still remember one of the songs from it, and I hum it constantly, and annoy everyone, but. It was just this beautiful little point-and-click adventure that I don't think I ever completed when I was younger, actually. I think it beat me, but it was gorgeous, and I would like to see that come back in some format. I think there's scope for that in kind of like an Ori and the Blind Forest sort of, very, very attractive-looking game set within that sort of world. So, yeah, there's lots of bits and pieces. That or that really weird Yoda game they made for Windows.
Oh, yeah.
What the? I'm trying to remember what that was. I've drawn a blank on that.
A little Zelda-esque, like top-down adventure game where you played as Yoda wandering about Dagobah and stuff. And there was an indie one as well. But,
Yes,
yeah,
Yoda Stories, wasn't it?
Oh my god!
that
Right,
was it.
Okay,
Because I
okay.
remember because when you said indie, they had one. I was like, oh yeah, and it was like literally as basic as it can come. But I
Oh,
remember
yeah.
my suspension of disbelief was like, I'm in this world now. This is the game I've always been waiting for that I didn't know I wanted to play, and it was fun. I don't think I ever owned it. I always played a demo or had it at someone else's. But it was so cute. It was adorable.
It was a really cute little game, and I think there's a lot to be said for those little time waster games. So it'd be nice to see something like that. It'd end up on mobile now, and you'd only be able to walk 5 steps, and then you'd have to pay for another 5. So,
Probably. Okay, that ties us nicely into our main topic of the show, and it is, of course, games that were too ambitious for their day that deserve a sequel too. So, to explain to the viewers exactly what this topic is, what I was thinking it would be are games that, well, had this huge ambition of scope or features, but either the hardware at the time or wasn't quite up to snuff, that it was, not launched in a broken state, but clearly just wasn't quite there. It needed a little bit of extra time. Should those games come out today with that same ambition and with that execution, they probably would have found like an audience and deserved to kind of come back. And we've got a selection that I've got on my list. I know you guys have got lists as well that you want to throw out. So, Sean, I want to start with you.
So, this question was so difficult for me because I was trying to think of great games that needed a sequel. And I was like, no, Ross asked specifically for games that didn't, hit the ground running as much. And I was like, because I love like the underdogs of games as well.
Yeah,
I was like, oh man, this is difficult. So I kind of skewed. Like my first entry is going to be a little bit skewed, and it's going to be the one that I mentioned that you had on your banner.
Yep.
But I think the Order 1886, like it was a launch title, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
PS4 launch title.
And with launch titles, you either hit the ground running like a Miles Morales, where it's like everyone wants to play it. It looks polished, looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Or there is a game that, like in this case, is very polished, but very, very, very light on the gameplay. So much so that it actually did it a disservice.
Yeah.
The Order, for anyone who doesn't know, it is basically a kind of like a steampunk Victorian Gears of War in the way it plays.
Yeah.
There is a lot of cover shooting. There is a great selection of weapons. There is great enemies. There are hordes. It's kind of that kind of gameplay. But the setting was fantastic. But it was just very light on everything else. And it was a shame because that game could have easily had a franchise. Like, it could have had a lot more sequels. It was a disservice that it launched and it just didn't hit the ground running, because the only people that really seemed to pick it up were people who were looking forward to it, or people who were looking to just have a few games at launch to play.
Yeah.
And that kind of doesn't, it leaves it a little bit cold, because it's like, well, I'm being forced to play something, or I'm going to buy something else that was on a previous gen as well. And a fantastic game. I would have loved that game to have had co-op. It just because of the Gears of War mentality.
Yeah.
Gears had co-op, and that's
the characters in that game is set up like for a squad, a co-op shooter, and you can absolutely see that had it gotten a sequel, it would have expanded all of that. It would have expanded the mechanics, it would have expanded the scope, and it would have had a co-op component, because it makes perfect sense. It is geared around a squad of these supernatural, like it's like a brotherhood, this. The Knights of something, I think they're basically referred to. Like Sir Galahad is like the main lead, so it's all got this like medieval King Arthur kind of terminology and myth to it, but set in a steampunk Victorian England. And there's werewolves. There's all. You can imagine almost like if you've got like co-op bounties where you got to squad up and take down like a major monster, a major vampire, or a major werewolf, or some kind of mythical beast, that would have just been tremendous as a co-op game. Absolutely tremendous. Yeah,
I think it could have rivaled Gears at the time if it had the attention to detail, the love from the devs. Just the same, even if it did exactly the same things as Gears, I think it could have been PlayStation's equivalent and answer to that. Even so much, like, not talking spoilers, but it did kind of leave it open-ended for sequels if there needed to be one, because they built a world.
Yeah.
And it's just like the best kind of games and films and TV shows is not the ones that talk about the instance that's happening, but it's about creating the world from the ground up so that it could be, spin-offs and all the stuff. And I do hope that we do see something come from that franchise again in the future.
We have to, because that game visually still holds up like today. It still looks incredible, but it's just a bit too linear. It's a bit too on rails. And the sequel probably would have opened all of that up, where you have a bit more free reign to explore and tackle combat situations. I remember one of the werewolf boss fights. You're in a warehouse, and you can only dodge its attacks when the prompt comes up. So you're really limited to your mobility in the boss fight, and you just think, okay, a sequel would have addressed all of that. Let me tackle the boss how I want to control the player, not when the on-screen prompts are telling me, oh, I can only dodge when it tells me I can dodge. Stuff like that. And that's probably like from its period in time, right back in 2013, 14, where there were, developers are still trying to work out third-person mechanics. Really, I mean, I know Gears of War was way before that, but still, for new developers, remember, this is Ready at Dawn. They were the PSP developer, like the portable developer, and this was their first proper like big home console title. And yeah, they smashed it on a visual, but the mechanics were lacking totally.
Yeah, and mustaches, they're all on point.
Yeah, I'm gonna get some wax in that and twirl mine, I think.
So yeah, that's my first entry to.
Okay, Jamie,
to this,
over to you.
See, mine's going to be way more obscure, but I have an odd penchant for FMV games.
Okay.
They like the Rippers and Phantasmagorias and those sort of games of yesteryear, which I love them because they were always so bad. Like, the acting was so poor that they were entertaining. But there was a couple that I played repeatedly, which was Star Trek Klingon and Star Trek Borg. Ooh. And they were phenomenal because you had I can't remember his name, John Delancey, who played Q. Yeah, he was actually in Star Trek Borg, and he was the one who was like guiding you through it. And he would, if you did something wrong, the way they got around the death was that he would just click his fingers and go, "Okay, try that again," and he would bring you back. And he brought all of that humor from the series into the sort of game. And they had Chancellor Garrett, the Klingon ambassador. He was in the Klingon game, so I would like very much to see those sort of games make it. And they kind of did. There was The Bunker, which I played. I think I reviewed that one when it came out, which was impressive. It wasn't a lot of fun to play. That was the problem with that one. Like the tech behind it was brilliant, and it was the story was quite interesting, but it got just a bit clunky to actually play through. I wasn't enjoying it that much. I would like to see a game like, particularly Star Trek, because I loved those games in particular. But I would like to see the resurgence of the FMV genre in general, if they did it right. Yeah. But I would like to see a little bit more of that. Just getting to play through, you can use minor characters from TV series, like Quark would be a good one from DS9, or I can't remember the guy's name from Discovery and stuff like that, and just have that FMV experience again. It's basically a puzzle game with videos that play in between the puzzles. Okay. So it's a simple enough format, but yeah, I think they tried really hard with those games, and they did some really interesting stuff, and it was very entertaining. Mm-hmm. And it just never took off, and it never got the love it should have got.
Yeah, it reminds me of Wing Commander. Mark Hamill series. Yeah. That had full motion video. God, even Command and Conquer with Kane and Red Alert had those full motion video inserts and stuff. It was what a time for PC gaming back then.
There was one game. I'm not sure if you would consider it kind of full FMV in the same way, but didn't Quantum Break do that?
Yeah, it kind of. It had
TV series?
It's a TV series which would be inserted at the end of a level, and then it would play the episode, which would refer to events which happened in the level that you just played. It wasn't interactive. It was just like a TV series that you would watch, and then you'd go into the next level. It was a cool concept, but yeah, it wasn't quite like full
The gameplay of
FMV
that
stuff.
though was Quantum Break was great. That's
the game that should actually be on my list. Yeah, I think it's better than personally. I think it's better than Control. I think it's Remedy's best work.
Really?
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I thought the story was fantastic. I thought the okay. The caveat here is that on Xbox One X it ran fucking terribly. It was way too ambitious for the hardware, but it got a patch for Xbox One X, and it looks glorious and it runs much more stable. And those like shattered time effects, when you see that at 4K, you think, holy crap, this is stunning. And it's got such a cool story about time travel and like breaking time if you mess with it too much. And it's science fiction like X-Files or The Fringe. And I honestly think personally it's more straightforward than Control. And I know people like the weirdness of Control and the kind of the different format, the non-linear format and structure. But there's something I just love about Quantum Break, how it is telling us this great like story, and the combat in it is just tons of fun. Like the time powers is I just find them way more visually impressive and way more fun than the Control powers. But anyway, that's just me.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Right, so is it my turn? Okay. All right. On my list, I have a game which could have been an entirely new mascot for Xbox, and I'm bitter and hurt that it never got the potential to do that, and it is Blinx the Time Sweeper. Okay?
Yeah.
This is a game which was so innovative for its day. You got to going back, you got to remember that the original Xbox was the very first console to have a hard drive. Okay?
Yes.
It wasn't memory cards, it had a hard drive. So Blinx the Time Sweeper actually used the hard drive to implement game mechanics such as it would record what you do in the level. It would record your motions, your actions, and it would integrate that into puzzle solving. So you would have fast forward powers, rewind powers, pause powers. Pause, not cat pause, but time pause. Hey, dropping the bangers here today, and so there's things like when you've got like you need two people to stand on a switch. So you would do the action, and then you'd record your action of standing on the switch. Then you'd rewind and you'd play the former action. So then you'd have a little silhouette of your character running to the switch, and then in real time you would hit the other switch. So rudimentary mechanics for its day, but it was so pioneering. And what was also awesome about it is when you got to the end of the level, every single level is like a time challenge as well. You're timed to see how fast you can speedrun it as well. So there's that aspect to it as well, which is a lot of fun. But you got a replay of everything you did in that run. At the end, when you got your score and like your scoreboard at the end of it, it would replay all of your actions. So it's using the hard drive to capture what you're doing in real time. And that was so innovative for its day. Like the PlayStation couldn't do that. The Nintendo couldn't do that. It was the OG Xbox and Blinx the Time Sweeper that was doing that. And I jumped around last night just for a mess around on backward compatibility. Again, it's been upscaled. It looks so sharp and colourful now. Still 4x3, so that's kind of funny. But going back and playing it, it feels like Luigi's Mansion. You have the vacuum, like the time vacuum, and so you can hoover up the garbage and then fire it as a weapon at enemies. So it's like, oh my god, this is like Luigi's Mansion but ahead of its time. And the Cheshire Cat kind of character of Blinx is such a cute, like he's got this like it's not like a nice smile. He's got this crazy maniacal like teeth showing grin, like he's fucking crazy. But
he's oddly creepy.
Yeah.
In a very cool way, but yeah.
But it was a launch title, wasn't it?
I can't remember if it was a launch title or not, but it was one of those exclusive games that used the hard drive in a way that had never been done before. And it just, man, that could have been a whole mascot for for the Xbox, like Conker was for the N64, right? For like Banjo-Kazooie was for a while. I know it's now associated with Xbox, but this Blinks could have been an actual character mascot for Xbox and an ongoing franchise. And so I'd love that to come back. If for nothing else, then the physics that could be utilized today. I mean, look at Luigi's Mansion 3 on the Switch. The physics work in that game is incredible. And it looks gorgeous. It looks like a Pixar game. But also, I want next generation fur physics as well for the Blinks himself. It could be so much fun and so charming and so weird. Like a Psychonauts, Tim Schafer kind of game, but with Blinks the Time Sweeper. I'd be well up for that.
That's incredible.
The question you need to ask yourself is, how realistic do you want that grinning, toothy Moore to get? Because there will come a point where he'll be just hard to look at.
I want it to look like Cats the movie, Jamie. That's what I want to look.
Wow.
Or maybe
Haven't watched it yet?
Or maybe Pikachu instead. Maybe the Pikachu movie would be better, actually. You know, make him cuddly.
Okay, I can live with that. Don't invoke cats again, though.
The stuff of nightmares, right? The stuff of nightmares.
Way too sober to talk about that.
Okay, Sean, number 2 on your list. What do you got?
Oh man, I might go a bit more old school, but not by old school. the audience I have is like, yeah.
How old is old school?
Let's maybe about 10, 12 years. So going back to Star Wars, one of my favorite franchises, if that's the word, franchise, is the Jedi Knight franchise. Love them all, from like, you know, Dark Forces and Jedi Knight and all that stuff. And one thing I actually don't really like in most Star Wars games is the fact that when you play a Jedi, you kind of are almost godlike, and the fun of trying to survive isn't really there. Until I played the Jedi Knight series, and my favorite one being Jedi Knight Jedi Academy, which actually had a remaster last year.
Yeah.
It's part of the series where you play Kyle Katarn, who is it's technically canon, I believe. Still.
Yeah. He's and it's a Jedi.
Yeah, and Jedi Academy was the first time that you didn't actually play the main protagonist from that series. You played a student of Kyle's. But the thing that made that game really stand out is it wasn't just you were going to different places to do missions. You were actually trying to start from being like, you know, just beyond a Padawan to wanting to become a Jedi Master. So you did go through, you know, the school process in a way, even so much so that you have to basically build your lightsaber so much. So you would start off with, I can't remember if you started off without having a lightsaber and it was a shooter, because you did have guns as well.
Yeah.
But you would start off using a single lightsaber, which was just like, you know, medium speed. It wasn't fast, it wasn't slow. And then the further you progress through the game, you would unlock the ability to either make a dual lightsaber, so such as the Phantom Menace, or you could go down the route where you want to have twin lightsabers, so you can have one in each hand, or you can stick to having a single, but have the option to have light version or heavy. So the light version would just mean loads of quick flurries, or heavy would be the slowest wind up, but it will take and break a lot of, you know, enemies a lot faster. So it went from being a single lightsaber to an option of, you know, potentially 3 or 4. Yeah. But the reason why I really wanted it to kind of come back is it was part of a series which, you know, eventually died, and that was the last big one. And it was just the journey of not being able to have a lightsaber and just dominate everyone in the field. Like, there was enemies who also had, you know, lightsabers. There was people who had, you know, blasters and rockets, and enemies who were just as big as the sandworms that you would have, like, or the Rancor monster in Tatooine. And it, for the first time, felt like a game where I was a Jedi and I wasn't overpowered. Yeah. And it was just fantastic. And, like, my reason for not liking Superman and DC and stuff is because he's so strong, he can't really have weaknesses. And that's my thing with Jedis. It's like, they're great to play as, but their threat isn't really as much. And then I played, you know, that series, and then the pinnacle for me was Jedi Academy. And I was like, oh wow, there are other people who are also Jedis there. There was people who can outnumber you with blasters. There are, enemies who aren't just humanoid. And I was like, that really works really well. And it's still to this day, my favorite example of being balanced as a Jedi still, and you don't have the upper hand. And the force abilities, I mean, they were the traditional. You can have force jump, force pull, force push, and grip and stuff like that. And it really worked really well. But it was just fantastic to be able to, like, I played on mouse and keyboard, so you can quickly whip over, grab someone, drop them in a hole, throw your lightsaber, do some stuff, and it just kind of worked really well. And it was my favorite. I mean, technically, I guess it isn't old school, but it was old enough to have a remaster. But for the balancing reasons, I think that is something I would love to see come back, because when we think Star Wars now, we think Jedi, we think gods now. And I just kind of want to bring back the vulnerability, just for it to feel like there is something you need to do other than just try and just force push your way through things.
So here's my question for you, Sean. If they were to bring it back, would you like to see it in a traditional format, as in on the controller or on a mouse and keyboard, like Jedi Fallen Order kind of format, or do you think it would be cooler to have it like an Half-Life Alyx VR sort of title, where you've got the movement of Beat Saber, the two lightsabers with the Valve Index or the motion controls, and have it like a title like that, so you have direct control of your lightsaber for dueling and stuff and bouncing around? What would you prefer? What would you like?
I think from the way I played it, it would be very nauseating to have it in VR, because effectively it was a first-person shooter still, with the ability to have the third-person lightsaber abilities.
Yeah.
So you were running at top speeds, you were jumping and going into high areas
and everything.
Yeah, and I mean, until the VR market be able to kind of get that mobility, because there are games out there which use lightsabers on VR, and you are kind of pretty much static unless you are moving quite slowly just to keep it from making you feel sick. But until, I don't even know how it could be done, but until we get the option to be as free as a fast first-person shooter, not just a normal shooter, but a fast one without feeling sick, I think I would kind of keep it classic.
Cool. Okay, Jamie, what's your next one?
Okay, so many moons ago, I played a game. This funny is old as well. This was a game that I started playing because I had it on a demo disc from PC Pro, and it was a game called Quarantine, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, Quarantine. It was just Quarantine. I thought it was a tagline, but no. Quarantine was really interesting. It was a game where you play as a taxi driver in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. And, post-apocalyptic, a city in the middle of a post-apocalyptic wasteland. So you play as a taxi driver, so you have to pick people up and get them to their, futuristic appointments of varying types. But it's become because people can't walk around the city because it's so dangerous and it's an irradiated slag heap, you have to get people where they want to go fast, and other taxi drivers will try and take you out because they want the fares. It's become the big growth industry, is ferrying people. So you can kit your car out with a variety of weapons and all sorts of bits and pieces. The idea was great. It had a huge city you could roll around in. There were tons of customization options for the cars. The problem was, it was basically a first-person shooter, but you were in a car. So when you're actually playing it was really weird, slightly disorientating, and not brilliantly put together. But the world they had built, even though it needed a lot of fleshing out with background and lore, because they never explained why it's an irradiated taxi-filled slag heap. But the idea was solid, and I've always wondered what it would be like if Rockstar got hold of the franchise and made it in GTA 5 sort of style, but with this customizable taxi. Have your home base with your garage. You can slap various weapons, custom paint jobs, etc., and then you go out and pick people up and get where they want to go while these hordes of other taxi drivers try and take you down. It was just It was one of those games that it's just balls to the wall carnage, and it wasn't like massively graphic or anything like that because it was cars that are getting blown up. You didn't really ever have to think about the people that were in them, which now I think about it, maybe not great, but it was the amount of customization they tried to put in it. Like there were hundreds of weapons ostensibly, and most of them were obviously there was only so much they could actually do with it at the time with the engine, and there were loads of different missions, and there were loads of different taxi companies that would come after you and all that. So if you could transplant that ambition and that base premise into something like GTA 5, I think you'd have a really interesting, insane game on your hands. And then if you add multiplayer to the mix, similarly to the way you play GTA 5 multiplayer now, I just think it would be a lot of fun. I think it would be one of those games that would be very popular on Twitch because it would just be chaos from start to finish as well. So,
yeah,
but
you can see a battle royale working for that kind of thing as well, where you've got 100 of these taxi people all trying to destroy each other, but also objective. Yeah, get contracts and kill each other as well at the same time. Man, that sounds awesome. That sounds really good. Okay, my next one.
Yes.
It's actually quite a recent one, but that's okay. And I'm going to actually call out Rise Son of Rome, which was a launch game on the Xbox One. Now, I avoided playing this for the longest time because I just heard so many bad things about it. I'd heard it was more of a tech demo, and to a degree it kind of is. But I played it, and I smashed it in about like 6 hours or something, and it's the similar thing of The Order 1886. So this was by Crytek. At the time, exclusive to Xbox, and it is visually stunning. This depiction of Rome is like Ridley Scott's Gladiator, but put into video game format. And I was playing it, and I thought, you know what? It got hit a lot of the time for combat that was very quick time event-y, but you don't. And this is what surprised me. You don't actually have to play it like a quick time event. You can still play it like a hack and slasher. But it's very, very repetitive in its combat. There's not much variation at all there. And it's a linear game, but the different set pieces that it takes you through are all incredibly well crafted and visually just incredible. The only thing that lets it down by really modern standards is like the resolution is super low. I think it's like 900p, so it's really like fuzzy and blurry. So if that got boosted, it would honestly hold up today as a visual showcase. But again, it's that thing of The Order 1886 where everything, there's a lack of variety, there's a lack of like real like exploration or things to kind of go and do on your own. Whereas I could absolutely see a sequel just expanding that out. And the more I was playing it, I think, my God, if this had gotten a sequel, it could easily have been like a God of War 2018 for Microsoft. It's got that, you know how Kratos is really big in the frame of God of War 2018. Is the camera's always behind his shoulder, and it's got this like really agile, inventive combat where you've got the different weapons, the different moves, the different special powers. You could absolutely see how a Rise Son of Rome could have gone in that, could have evolved into that and got more like just bigger, more impressive, and really tapped into the Greek god mythology as well, because it is referenced in the game quite heavily about the gods influencing man to bring about war, all this kind of stuff. So they could have really expanded upon all of that. But it didn't. It just got like ripped apart at launch for its review scores, unfairly going back and playing it. But at the same time, the gameplay is so limited and so one note that you think, okay, yeah, there's really not much to this, but my God, it was so much fun. And the technology that Crytek did with their engine for the character animations, the cutscene like facial animations and acting and the voice acting, I think, holy crap, this is really, really high end, really impressive. And again, it's an example of an Xbox exclusive franchise which could have been something, could have really developed into something huge. And it's a little bit frustrating when you see games like that. You think, had it gotten the chance to fix all of these things, it could have been a monster hit for them. It really could have been.
Yeah. Every time I saw gameplay or anyone showing it off, it was always the first level. So I was never sure what the rest of that game was. And I got an Xbox One on launch, and I went for Dead Rising 3
Yep.
instead
Yeah.
of Rise, because I thought, is this just going to be a period hack and slash game? Is
Yeah.
there something more to it than that? And I kind of want something a bit more spicy on top of my history, other than just a straight up, this is what's going to happen. So what you've just described there was new news to me of how that game is, because I guess the marketing as well didn't really show too much of what else other than that first, when you're being beached on the shore and fighting your way up
Yeah.
shore at the start. That's the only thing that marketing ever
Yeah.
really showed that level.
I mean,
and I don't know what else there was.
The set pieces are wicked. I mean, the bit from that marketing level is there's various points in the game where you have to basically form up with your army and you lead them in a phalanx. Like they're all holding their shields out, and the ones behind you are holding the shields over the top, and then flaming arrows are coming in, and the camera's like super tight behind your character, and you can see like the facial animation as he's yelling to his troops. The arrows and the lighting and the depth of field effects as the arrows are coming in, and you have to block and brace yourself. Like that happens periodically throughout the game. I know it's scripted, but by God, it is effective as hell. And you just think, man, this could have been something really special. And I was expecting the combat to be purely quick time events, like press X here, press Y here. But it's really not. It is like light attack, heavy attack, block or deflecting, and you can dodge whenever you want, that kind of thing. So it is that God of War style, God of War 2018 style of combat, and it's more rhythm based as well. So it's like timing your light attack with a heavy attack to knock your opponents off balance, and then the quick time event will pop up to say, okay, now you can do the finishing move. But the problem there is it's only that throughout the entire course of it. So it lacks the variety to continually change it up. So it's very, I wouldn't say boring at all, because I was always kept on my toes. I was always getting like misjudging it and thinking, oh, God damn it, I mistimed that. Because it is, you got to like pick and choose your time for pressing the button for when you're going to attack, because they can get a quick attack in before you've done your wind up for your attack. So it is time based and rhythm based, but it's the fact that it doesn't ever evolve into something bigger, like more moves. Yeah. Like you could imagine like Ghost of Tsushima, where you gradually unlock different fighting techniques, or like different armor sets, or it could have been just epic for a sequel. It would have been tremendous. But I still recommend it. It's still it's an absolute riot to play. But it's just a shame that we didn't get what the full potential of what that could have been.
Yeah.
Boo-hoo.
Well, you've sold me on actually trying it now.
You absolutely should. It's a really fun like 6 hours, and you'll smash it out, and it's just, and you look at it thinking, holy crap! I had no idea. I had no idea what Crytek were doing with this game, because of the different scenarios that they put you in, are like the scale of it. There is one bit where you feel like it's Helm's Deep, where there's this siege on this castle that looks like Helm's Deep, but it's like a Roman castle, and you got to defend it. It's almost like the Return of the King, where remember the OG game Lord of the Rings Return of the King, where you'd have to run across the top, kicking off the ladders from the invaders. So, and the siege towers coming in. So there's that stuff as well. And then there's like the gladiatorial stuff, like in the arena. And then you have to fight, like proper Ridley Scott Gladiator put to game format. It was such an underrated game, man.
See, I never got round to trying it, but it was on the list for the. Sorry about the chair. It was on the list for the longest time. I really ought to. My pile of shame is taller than me, though. So
and I don't know if that's on Game Pass or not. I think it is actually, but it's worth checking out just to see. Man, this is what Crytek did as a launch game.
Yeah,
it's wild. It's really, really wild. Anyway, that's enough out of me. I could blather about nonsense for forever. So, Sean, back to you, buddy.
I'm going back to Remedy.
Ooh, okay.
I'm going back to the franchise that spawned even a film. My love,
Okay.
one of my one true video game loves is Max Payne, and not so much the character, more the love for what the game did. It introduced real good bullet time to the games industry, and it's not so much I want Max Payne 1 or 2. It's just the fact that 3 felt like the most polished Max Payne experience, but it was probably what is the reason why it isn't the thing anymore, because it there was other games that came out that was doing similar, if not better, with the mechanics. But I love Max Payne for the dark and gritty story. Like, it was so dark that there would be obvious scenes of people in the Brazilian favela being kind of burnt in tires and stuff, and you're like, I'm trying to save this person, and all of my leads are basically, dying. And it's a really dark kind of story, as well as a great mechanic. Like, we get these great mechanics, but then maybe they are in stories or environments or topics that are just a bit more lighter, or they're just there for shooter reasons. And the greatest thing about the franchise of Max Payne, I guess the reason why it spawned a film, is because it is about the dark underworld of drugs and the mafia and this corruption. And you are one man who isn't special. I mean, you didn't have anything that made you OP other than the fact that you can do slow motion diving, but you can still be killed in the middle of diving because it's just a mechanic that was really cool. But my game for this list would be Max Payne 3, because the first 2 were really good products of its time. The third one felt like it was probably one of my favorite presentations of a game, like how text would appear in walls and the way that things were presented, and colors and the camera angles. And it actually made Max Payne look like someone actually who could be real, not the Sam Lake face capture that he did for the first one. But also the fact that it also had a great I personally feel that it had a great multiplayer. So this is by the time when Rockstar came aboard.
I was going to ask, actually. So do Remedy still own Max Payne then, if they didn't make the third one?
So I don't believe they did. Rockstar came on board, and I love the Remedy one, and I also love the third one by Rockstar. So it goes to show that the game, as well as the story, as well as the mechanics, whoever has it, as long as it's done with well, it is a ubiquitous kind of great example. But even like in Rockstar's multiplayer, the thing about Max Payne is about shoot dodging and bullet time. And like, how does that work in an online space? Because you are effectively slowing down the time. And the way that they remedied that, I keep doing puns, is it was vicinities and pockets of area that would have the bullet time.
Right.
So no one would have like a full bar that they can just use whenever. They would have like, I guess, bursts of it. I might be forgetting, but you could be on one side of the map fighting it out with someone, and it doesn't affect the time somewhere else, which kind of worked. I'm not sure. I mean, I would have to go back to it, but I felt that kind of answered the question of how do you do Max Payne multiplayer, and it felt really good. So much so that Rockstar became, did more multiplayer stuff with some of the games like, GTA 4 after that, and then all of their other games. But I would love to see Max Payne return, not just because of the mechanics, but because of the world and how dark things are. It was very brave and bold, and it was an 18 for a reason, and it didn't need to have sex or swearing to make it that way, but it was the detectives talking out loud to himself as part of the narration, and that was really cool. And I'll never forget that it became a bit too realistic at some points, where you could literally dive towards like a wall or a corner or something, hit your head and lose health. So much so that you
gave yourself
die.
a concussion. Yeah.
You can, and it's like, because you think about these games where people are jumping and diving and rolling downstairs and stuff, and Max Payne 3 was like, no, let's make you think about stuff, because it's not just going to be an action shooter. We're going to, there are consequences. You can't just dive anywhere. So I remember the first time diving and hitting a wall, I'm like, I'm dead. Like, what? oh, that's a thing. And the presentation was fantastic. And I would happily have that gritty, that noir-esque film kind of, story back. even if it is kind of dark and it's about trying to rescue people that might end up dying in your hands anyway. But it felt very different to a lot of the adult kind of themes that I was playing at the time. And it was real good. And it's a shame that it didn't do enough for it to kind of continue growing. And I'm not sure if it's because Rockstar did it to do other things, but that's kind of
Possibly,
where it's where it stopped, and it's where it still waits for me.
I need to check it out because I think it's playable on Back and Pat on Xbox anyway. I've actually got the disc from the 360, but it's a game that I've never put in and actually played. I think I picked it up super cheap.
Yeah.
So, but I need to see if it's playable via backward compatibility because I've heard like such good things about it as well. So yeah, it'd be awesome to see Max Payne come back. Yeah. Jamie, over to you.
So, I started to struggle a wee bit to think of more because most of the games I was thinking of, I just kept thinking of games I want sequels of.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But then they didn't really fit into the niche of being too ambitious. Like one, you mentioned Banjo-Kazooie in there. I think the fact that Banjo-Kazooie kind of paused with nuts and bolts is a shame because I think that showed ambition, dropping it into this open world with all these puzzles and things like that. But it never. So I kept going further back, which is what I've been doing for the whole thing. So I remembered a game that from a long time ago called Hexen.
Oh yes,
and,
I remember Hexen.
And Heretic, which was Heretic was either the first one or the follow-up. I think it was Hexen 2. I think Heretic was a follow-on. But so they were very much Doom. I was about to say Doom clones, but I think they were id actually saying that. So, but they were first-person shooters, but with magic instead of guns.
Yeah,
nice.
But very much in the vein of Doom, so that you were jibbing stuff left, right, and centre, which was just ludicrously good fun. Very over the top, and I think it would be really good. I would love to see, like, Machine Games would be a good one. I would love to see. You look at Wolfenstein now. If you can give them that. Magic and fantasy sort of setting, but with a wizard who he's not all about Expelliarmus. He's more about I will blow your face off the front of your head, but with magic. So, nice. But I think it's something that's not been. I mean, even just looking at Doom now, like Doom is so over the top and insane, and just it's ultra carnage.
Yeah,
that way you're running around with a wand. Sign me up. I'll take a bit of that. So I think that, but the reason that I thought it fit into the ambitious thing was that it took an established format where everyone was running around with guns, and it gave you a wizard's staff, and that was it. You just had this staff for most of it, and a handful of different spells you could fire out of it. And I never heard any of my friends talking about it at the time. Everyone was still playing Quake or playing Doom, whatever, and no one was interested in the guy running around hurling fireballs. If you put it into an RPG, they'd be happy, but it was almost like they tried to push an idea that people weren't quite up for at the time. And I think if you took that now and gave it to someone like Machine Games or someone, or just let Bethesda do it, let it do it with the same team they did Doom with, and I think you'd have a lot of fun. Most of the games that I want to come back apparently are just really violent, insane games. But I think that would.
You're making this sound like the Voldemort years or something of Harry Potter. He just goes on a massacre, killing Muggles.
Hexen 3, Death Eater. I'd play that.
Absolutely, that's got to happen, right? Yeah, that's the multiplayer mode of Hogwarts Legacy. That's what's going to happen.
Could you imagine?
Oh, God.
Actually, can you imagine a Harry Potter like game mode for that, where it's like the spies versus mercs from Splinter Cell, but it's like wizards against Death Eaters or something. That would be quite interesting.
That'd be insane.
Yeah.
I like that. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Okay.
What's yours?
Right. So. This is a game which is really, really old on the... I say really, really old. It's maybe just like one really old. It came out originally on the PC, and it was a beloved series that did get a reboot, but the reboot did not do well at all, and it seems to have killed the franchise.
Oh no.
And I think it deserves a comeback. And that is Thief.
Yes.
The Thief series. And you played the titular thief of the title called Garrett. And it was set during this kind of medieval time in England. And the early games were just fantastic. Thief 1, 2, and 3 were on PC. The third game, Deadly Shadows, came to original Xbox. I still have my game disc in my folder. And it was wicked. It was third person. You could clamber up. It was like way before Assassin's Creed doing parkour for climbing or anything like this. And you could sneak into like different buildings in this really like Tim Burton-esque Victorian like weird town. These different buildings, and you could basically rob people, and that was the whole point of the game. Is you had to like sneak into these high level different different areas of the game, different buildings with different security measures in place, patrolling guards and stuff, and you had to steal something and then get that to your fence to then sell it and make a profit. And that was basically the whole crux of the game. And it was brilliant. You had this blackjack club, and what was so interesting about it is the guard patrols always seemed to feel like really dynamic, and you could just sit on a ledge and just listen to their dialogue, and the dialogue was really interesting as well. It was really well thought out. Like you almost felt sorry for these guards and their backstories, just before you like bludgeon them unconscious and then like take their coin purse off their body. But what's kind of sore about this one is the series came back in 2014 with Eidos Montreal and Square Enix as a reboot, entirely first person. And this was off the back of this team, Eidos Montreal, bringing Deus Ex back with Human Revolution to huge acclaim. And then when it was announced that they were bringing back the Thief series, everybody was like, yes, let's go. It's go time, people. This is like a perfect match. They showed their chops with like multiple intricate level designs and ways to sneak around a level, ways to tackle a level, and then take that learning into the Thief universe. It should have just been a slam dunk. But what was problematic with it is the first person mechanics were actually really good, but it was so limited in what you could actually do within the sandbox. The sandbox was so small, and by that point Assassin's Creed was like off to the races. It was showing how parkour mobility was really should be done in this kind of city environment, clambering over rooftops, getting up to the roof and then making your own beeline, like however you want to address it. Whereas Thief was so restrictive and where you could go, how you could move around the environment, and you could only enter certain buildings, and it was some windows which had this kind of like shimmer over it, and that means you could go into that building. But whenever you opened the window, it would immediately close behind you, and it was a slow open animation because it was to hide the loading from one area to the next. So you couldn't go back and forth easily. It didn't feel like an open sandbox. I'm thinking like Hitman style of huge sandboxes, what it should have been, but it was so restrictive, and you could never get up to the rooftops. It was always, you could always get so far on certain ledges you could get to, and it was a damn shame because, again, it had the presentation, it had great mechanics. You had this like crouch and swoop mechanic, which means you could, as you were crouching, you pressed the A button and you would like do this dash, but it was like a silent dash. So you could dash through like light spots and stuff and really stay in the shadows like this hidden like thief assassin type of character. Again, it captured everything about the Thief universe and the previous games. Like the guards would patrol dynamically, they would have these conversations. You could, the mechanics for like looting drawers and stuff were so tight, and you had this thing where you would feel around a painting, like the frame of a painting, to find the switch. Again, it used rumble triggers to when you would find the latch to get into a safe. It had lockpicking. You know, when you were going through drawers, Garrett would just open the drawer, immediately pick up the item, and then close the drawer all in one animated motion. It wouldn't be like you would have to then open all the drawers, then pick up the thing with another button, then close the door with another button. It was so seamless and tight. But it was the lack of player freedom which really hurt that game like crazy. And it's a damn shame because had we gotten a modern Thief 2, whether it be Eidos Montreal or Crystal Dynamics or any of the Square Enix family of studios, you just think, man, they could have really opened up the environments and allowed like players to create their own agency within the environments, to get really experimental with the gadgets, the water arrows, the firecracker arrows to cause distractions. And it could have been really awesome to see, like a Dishonored, where you've got Dunwall, which is a big sandbox environment, and you get to tackle the lethal, non-lethal approach, sneaking around the environments as you want to. But within the Thief universe, it could have just been so rich of like different things to steal, different fences that only deal with certain types of black market goods, and like upgrades for your rope thing that you throw and grapple up. I mean, the potential, the crossbow that you get, the different lockpicks or something. The potential could have been massive as well, absolutely huge. And it's just a game which sadly I don't want to say bombed, but it didn't do well at all. I don't think it was very well received because of the restrictions. And now it's just been shelved for like 6-7 years, and I don't even know if Thief is going to come back or not. So, what a shame.
No, it is a shame because I played the original Thief games and loved them, and then when that came out, I was very excited, and it felt like it would let me do anything I wanted to do as long as I was only doing it very much within the little bits where they were allowing me to do. And then you move on to the next section. It just it did. It was a fun play, but it didn't have that pizzazz that it should have had.
Yeah, I remember going back to the original as well. I think it's in the second game. There is a level in that game that is held up as one of the best levels in video games. So you know how in like Titanfall you have the cause and effect. There's a level in Thief 2. I can't remember what it was specifically, but I remember it was the most psychological kind of thrilling. As in, I think it was something quite scary or quite haunting about it. I never played it, but I just remember always seeing one level taken out of this entire franchise, being like, this is the reason why you should jump into Thief. Yeah. I'm like, what is it about this game? I would have to dig it out, but there was something that was very different to the other levels, and I think it was quite scary about it. I was like, wow, that breaks the mold a little bit with what it was. And also fan of the water arrows as well. It's just something you never get in any other game.
Yeah.
I know. Well, so before we wrap it up, is there any other titles on your list that you want to quickly cover off?
There was one I was going to say, but I'm kind of glad it's been, I think, more modded in a more recent game. So did you ever hear about or play the Mercenaries game? It'd be EA.
Yeah.
So the pandemic, guys. So the fantastic thing was it was a co-op game that you could play, and it is basically like Just Cause. It is a kind of more of an open world, and you are trying to liberate people. And the cool thing was they had a deck of cards, so there'd be like 52 kind of bosses, and it will kind of escalate up to like the king. But there was like smaller pawns within there, and it was a fantastic kind of co-op game because we were speaking about co-op earlier. And the second game like absolutely bombed. Like it was broken. I remember when EA turned off the servers, and I was like, this is a shame. But having a co-op game, let's just say if Just Cause was to introduce co-op, I think that would happily tick my box. I want Just Cause to at least bring back a multiplayer that isn't in a mod form. But I loved like Mercenaries 2, the fact that you could, steal tanks or aircrafts, and it felt like it did a lot more back then, but also not broken to the co-op standard, because co-op and action games is just carnage.
Yeah.
But it kind of kept kept it sane, and it was fun. And there was like 3 main protagonists. There was some decent actors in that. But whilst I was kind of going through the list, I was like, does
Mercenaries like predate Just Cause?
I don't think it. I think Mercenaries 2 would have been around the time Just Cause 1 would have been out, because it was around that time on the Oh, it was the Xbox 360 era. So Just Cause was a launch title on Xbox, and then Just Cause 2 would have been towards the middle. But yeah, no, Mercenaries 1, I believe, was on PlayStation 2, maybe? Or maybe I'm getting the times wrong. But it's more the sequel.
Yeah.
It got a sequel. It bombed. It was EA. It was from Pandemic Studio, who did so they are still doing stuff like Destroy All Humans and Star Wars Battlefront 2 at the time.
I think they did Full Spectrum Warrior as well, which was one of my favorite strategy games of its day. And I always
we can talk about that.
Yeah, we should. And I always wanted Full Spectrum Warrior to, like, that style, all those mechanics to be transposed into a Syndicate strategy game. I always thought that would have been fucking tremendous, but never mind. We never got it.
Well, the best thing about Full Spectrum Warrior is that was originally made for the military.
Yeah.
So it made sense that those tactics felt really good. And it got a sequel, but that was a bomb.
Oh man, I was at 10 Hammers or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Full Spectrum Warrior, because I never played that one, actually. I played the first one to death, though. It was really good.
Original Xbox.
I know, some killer titles there. Anyway, so that is quite enough for today's show. A massive thank you to both Jamie and Sean for joining the Weekend Catch-Up Club for episode 24. If you've enjoyed this, then do write in the comments and maybe give the show a like and let us know how we're doing. And if you have any ideas for any future topics you want us to cover, then of course, put in the comments as well. Great times, guys. Until next time, take care.
Bye.